few of the stuff which we are incorporating. I'll deep dive into the ongoing discussion, and let's see how we are able to correlate the data set which have been developed as an input data set, particularly the performance matrix. So, the understanding of this discussion is around the performance matrix and how those matrix would be evolved in the quantum stuff, looking into the historical and the environmental data sets. Putting myself on mute will start in a while. Okay, so in continuation to the discussion, we'll be talking about the interventions and particularly the interventions with the utilization of the handheld devices and also understanding the classification of the same from the viewpoint of how only a limited number of candidates, or say, for example, if I have to take the parameters of the candidate, that is O negative blood group, which is rarest of the rare, then having wisdom tooth itself makes the candidate one of the prevalent candidate, or privileged would be the right word. It's not the prevalent, it's the privileged candidate, because the cells which are restored, or the cells which are taken from the around the wisdom tooth itself in terms of whatever samples can be taken for conducting the experiments, that itself can be part of developing the miracle drugs. And that being said, we need to understand the nomenclature from the longevity time or increasing the longevity as a whole, what all can be taken into consideration apart from the historical and the environmental data sets. For that particular stuff, we will first review few of the tagging part, and the tagging would be around understanding what the measurement is all about and what is the relevant tag around that measurement, and that measurement itself, um, if you push that data set through the EPO, that is European Patent Office database, you would be able to understand the nuance of how healthcare has evolved in the last 2 decades. And with the utilization of these small language models, a lot can be achieved in a shortest possible time. Because there is, although if we talk about spectrum, so at the one end of the spectrum is the speed, at the other end of the spectrum is perfection. So we have to look at the speed of being so fast with the utilization of the futuristic algorithm which we have developed, that the tweaking itself takes negligible amount of time in real world. Because in the quantum world, a lot can be done in pad, like you can put these samples in parallel and you can look into the optimization angle. Okay, let's understand the tagging part first. So, blood has been one of the prime candidate for the measurement purpose for any of the healthcare based ailments. And apart from the breathing analogy of what has been developed in recent past, a lot is not able to be understood because the candidates are coming with a lot of historical data set, and the environmental data set itself changes a lot. um, okay, so first is the identification of the candidate. Here it is person, but I'll replace it with candidate, and perhaps we have to give a new tagging altogether to this particular tag, which is A61B5 slash 117, that is identification of persons. Um, Persons itself can be utilized as a persona, and that is a very relevant term in the data science field. Persona is how a certain candidate is utilizing the data set to uh, mitigate or have the interventions, the way the interventions need to happen in real time. So the next is remote monitoring. We talked about the control and the monitoring. Again, control is one end of the spectrum, at the other end of the spectrum we have control. So this is remote monitoring of the ailments using telemetry, example transmission of vital signals through the communication network. That means we need internet, categorized by the type of physiological signal transmitted. A61B5 slash 0004. Then the ICT based understanding of this is um, G16H50/30, that is ICT related stuff, which is adapted for the diagnosis of the ailment, if any, and the medical simulations and the medical data mining, which is done with the available data sets. So, this is particularly utilized for detecting, monitoring, modeling epidemics, pandemics, and evaluating the health index for the, if one of the parameters which is being very, I would say very recent but utilized by masses, is the assessment, and particularly the health assessment. And there has been a lot of discussion around the OCR of the prescription prescribed by medical doctors. Here I'm talking about medical doctors, I'm not talking about dentists, physiotherapists, and the like. So, when we talk about a medical doctor, most of the instances, with the best of the technologies, somehow the reading of the language is not possible. Now, is it a good thing or a bad thing? That is debatable. But what is important here is to evaluate the state of the data set in terms of developing the models as to what problem is being resolved. Now, for the longevity itself, um, a lot can be shifted in terms of the genome characteristics with proper training, not through the app model, but through individual dynamic um, assessment. So it is a process, and this can be both, or I would rather say it would be a combination of both online and offline, and that itself can be utilized to increase the longevity with the models which have proved that this is very much um, achievable, and it is achieved by a very small data set in this world right now, and that too folks who are coming online to talk about it. So you would be seeing folks talking about longevity without even knowing what longevity is all about. So this is there. Then we have for the identity safety, it is G06Q50 slash 265, that is personal security, identity, and safety. Then we have for the administration of the healthcare resources or the facilities is G16H40 slash 67. For the healthcare and the welfare, which is a very important tag, and I think most of the folks are missing on this. They talk about the healthcare without even understanding the nuances of the word utilized to resolve an ailment. Many a times it is not an ailment, it's just more to do with the historical and the environmental data set of that particular being, and that can be reversed very easily with proper counseling. um, so this is G16Y10 slash 60. Then we have, if I talk about the devices which are used to view the body of the, let me understand this. Okay, so if it talks about sensors, it talks about magnifying lens. This is around A61B5. Again, I think we need to change this tag slash 0077. Um, we have been talking about GPS for the longest time, and for the global tracking of, now again it talks about patient. So the global tracking of patient by using GPS, that is A61B5 slash 1112. Metadata, okay, I think this is important. H04M1 slash 27453. Directories allowing storage of additional subscriber data, for example, the metadata. Okay, so interventions. I will talk about the environment stuff because that is more important right now to be understood to create the data set around the environmental parameters. So just give me a moment. Okay, let's see. Okay, simply they're talking about in this particular scenario, or rather say, I would say the event of the possibilities and the probabilities, it would be continuously taking the sample of the ambient microclimatic data that includes your temperature, humidity, pressure, carbon dioxide, particulate count, acoustic spectrum. So this is important. Nobody is taking this into account because these deployment of the apparatus, or we talk about the devices, it's costly affair. I mean, sensor working in a open entropy, it's going to be different. So it is acoustic spectrum, light spectrum. Then we have electromagnetic frequency, radio frequency interference, geomagnetic flux at a sub-secondary granular understanding of the data set. Then timestamping, geotagging, and encrypting of every sample with a quantum safe watermark, and it can be used before, or it can be how you maneuvered this on a test results. That would be interesting to see. Then we have run on device, that is Cubo based anomaly detection, that flags any deviation from a dynamically updated baseline equation, and it publishes the anomaly vector to a topic in the quantum safe mesh. And what can be done is we can have the understanding of a tempo evident collaboration or calibration port. So there has to be, what is the plus minus of the data set, that has to again be hypothesis. And this can be done very easily with the online tools. It's not an expensive experiment per se, but be sure not to do these experiments on your own self, because then if you're not aware as to how to come back, then that is a question mark. Okay, so you enter, or the candidate enters an ultra low power quantum wake mode where the magnetic or the radio frequency signatures match a pre trained variation autoencoder template of the user preference. And the sensor throttles from, perhaps, I don't want to give the hertz or the kilohertz which we can utilize, because it depends on the person to person, or let's call it candidate for now. And yeah, I mean, I can go into detail, but I don't want to right now. So these environmental sensors are separate from what we have, these handheld devices, and that deployment which is stationary, because once something is stationary it becomes a core. So if we talk about GPS and we say that, okay, under this diameter or the perimeter, whatever is being defined, we have a periphery, we have a circle, and that's how the easy way out is to understand that. And one very good example could be the functioning of how a wheel rotates in 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 a, I think I have something with me which I wanted to discuss, but not today. Perhaps maybe in coming days, because that data set I have to put onto the Impula network and see the results first, and then if that works out, I'll discuss it in detail. Yeah, so we are good for now. So you need to have the understanding of historical versus the environmental data sets, which is very important. Thank you for watching this out. I believe this would be of good training data set for the folks who are working in the quantum part, and particularly don't select the candidates based on what they are showcasing. You have to get into a lot of data sets before you even select the right candidate for the quantum purpose. Thank you for watching this out. Have a great day ahead.